We're going to hang out for a minute until people come in. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to Guitar Hunter Live. Morocco, welcome. Man, I'm glad you're here. Hey, Roger, Jacob, Hector, Dino, James. James, good to see you. Is it still morning? Where is it morning? I guess west of here. Oh, little clippage. Okay, I'll turn this down. I set it for my vocals and I'm playing guitar kind of loud, so. Howdy. How's your mom and them? Oh, that's a good one. That's a good. That gets me. All right, there's a good chunk of us here, so I'll put this over to the side. I'll get the mic up in front of my face, and how's that sound? I'm on a slight delay here, and my computer's down here. I tried to figure it all out. Got a little crazy today. No matter how much planning goes in, something always happens, and I'm always running late. Always running late. And I'm not somebody who typically runs late. It's just there's so many moving parts to making these videos. Anyway, I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you're here. How's your week? Good week, bad week? This week for me started from my backflip. Oh boy, there it goes. Camera's on my face now. So I try to do a backflip because I'm 33 and I still feel young, although I have 3 kids and a wife, and which that doesn't make you old, but being overweight and underconfident doesn't help. So I did a backflip, landed on my face. It didn't seem that bad at first, but I got a pretty good raspberry on the front of my nose. And then the other day I was walking down the steps and I almost broke my leg. It's like 4 low steps coming out of the house, coming out here to the guest house. And I just, yeah, it was bad. I ended up like slipping and my heels slipped. And then I just kept trying to catch myself because I really didn't want to smash. Like it felt like I was going to hit my tailbone or the back of my head really hard. And so I just kept scrambling, trying to get my feet under me. And eventually my foot kind of caught, but my knee, and it just like went sideways. It was terrible. So I should have been way more hurt by it than I was. I have a little twinge. It's not in my knee. It's like in the top of my, like the side of my shin. Anyway, so let's see. How's your mom and them? Everybody's good here. We're hanging around. We're in Louisiana. We've just finished our 2nd week here, and it's been awesome. It is a little colder because it started out when we first got here. It was like 77, and my kids went swimming the first day, and then today is the first day. It's like there's a cold snap. I think the whole country's real cold, but in Louisiana, when it gets into the 50s, people freak out. But it was like 40s this morning, and then it's supposed to get into the 20s and 30s at night over the next couple days. But anyway, I wanted to get fancy, and do like the talking, like the blurb over my shoulder. But there are a couple things I'm still working on getting OBS together, and I have really poor internet here, so I didn't think I could handle that. But I want to talk today, the whole show. I want to do announcements, and then I'll talk about what the whole show is going to be about. So the whole show today is going to be, I just want to talk about, walk you through how I buy guitars. Like I've literally bought thousands of guitars, and I'm not someone who typically runs like deductive reasoning, like step 1, step 2, step 3. I just kind of run with it. I just kind of keep up with whatever my brain and my intuition are telling me. So, holy cow, 9 degrees this morning. Yeah, it's about the same in Virginia. It's I think it was in the teen, I'm sure. Raphael, hey buddy. So, anyway, announcements real quick before we get in. So we'll talk about how to buy guitars. So that's going to be the overarching, like the whole thing. We'll do some Q&A at the end. I've got some questions from Instagram. But first, I want to thank my patrons. This podcast is brought to you by my patrons. It's not quite a podcast yet. We're working on that. I may have let a cat out of the bag a smidge. But this is brought to you by my patrons. I have my ride or die patrons. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Tom. I have 4 just ride or die great patrons that really make sure that these videos keep happening. And then I have like 18 other of the 2 tiers. So if you want to support the channel, if you want to help these videos come, if you want to get early access to video, exclusive access to Q&As, behind the scenes, there's some behind the scenes content. And lastly, there's also some merch coming that will be patron only for the first couple months. So become a patron, patreon.com/guitar hunter. $3 a month, you get early access to videos. I put, because I'm like batching, the internet's not fast enough here today. I put up 3 videos today, 1 on Patreon, and then I'll put the others up over the next couple days. So you'll get to see videos typically a week or 2 ahead of time. You'll get the edge, especially if you're into the kind of guitars I want to buy, that I buy and I sell through the channel. The first crack, the last couple, they've all been sold to people that are patrons before they ever hit the public. Because people keep asking me, where are my guitars sold? And it's a great problem. But pretty much all of them, they've been selling so quickly that they don't even make it to the website or my Instagram, really. I mean, they're kind of gone before then. People see a picture and they send me a message or they send me an email. Anyway, all that to say, super, super good. So 83 in Sebastian, Florida. Mike Pinion, you sly doggy. That's great. Holy cow, Max says, just made it in time. Germany is negative 20 degrees Celsius. Sheesh, that is so cold. Isn't it Fahrenheit and centigrade intercept at -40 degrees, right? And I don't think they intercept again. Do they only intercept one place, or they intercept also really high? It's like 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Nope, that can't be right. Anyway, that is real cold. So okay, that's everything. So I'm just gonna work through. So that's right. I pulled out my Waterloo. This guitar came with me. This is my unexpected favorite guitar. I didn't see it coming. This guitar is my ride or die. I will take this with me everywhere I want to go. I want to put a pickup in it soon. That's the last thing that it's lacking. But I bought this guitar used, and we can take the case study of how I bought this. And I also want to just extrapolate and talk about how you do guitar deals, because I think there's a lot of things that feel really intuitive to me, or they're just natural to me because I've done it so many times. But a lot of people, you don't buy thousands of guitars. You're trying to buy a couple guitars. You're trying to find the right guitar for you. So I want to give you some tips, tricks, advice along the way. So the first part of So the first part of buying any guitar that you'd have to do. I'm going to pull the camera a little closer. This feels too far away. Is that better? That feels better. Yes. Look forward to these videos. Oh man, I'm glad. Live videos are so fun. The insecure part of me is like, this is what it's showing. Like, this is a lot more what it's like before I edit videos, because there are so many jump cuts where I just chop out lots of so. Oh my gosh, I say so often. Couldn't get around that one. But anyway, so damn it. I literally did it seconds after saying that that's a pet peeve of my own linguistic style. Therefore, buying a guitar. There are many parts of this that you need to know, but basically it's, 5 or 6 steps. And so we'll just kind of walk through them, and then when we get done with that, we'll move into Q&A. So the first one is finding guitars. So where do you find guitars? Where do you find gear? This used to be more straightforward than it is now, because there's a lot more ways to find cool guitars and gear, and many different places to find them. So the first one is you have to find gear somewhere. So The old faithful for me is still Craigslist. I love Craigslist. You can find so much stuff. Craigslist is great, and it is also terrible. It's great because you get stuff and people have stuff. They're close to you. It's geographically based. Typically, Craigslist is going to be more stuff that is not, they don't know as much about what it is often, so you can get better deals. But because it does the anonymous, there's this anonymous component to it, it makes it tricky because there are lots of emails that will just never get responded to. And so you'll send an email, you'll find a cool guitar, you'll send an email, and then people just never get back to you. Or they get back to you and, it's just clearly scammy, fraudy stuff. Or if you find guitars on there that are way too good of a deal, like basically, I think I'll save us this rabbit trail. Don't buy Les Pauls on Craigslist unless you really know Les Pauls, because I guarantee that I would say the majority, maybe not the majority, but a preposterously high amount of guitars that are. Oh, I looked at the chat. I got distracted. There are a preposterous amount of guitars of Gibson Les Pauls that are not real Gibson Les Pauls. It is so easy to find fake Les Pauls, especially there are some pretty big telltales. That's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so as you're looking to buy guitars, if there are deals that are too good, a Les Paul for $600, like a Les Paul, it's always like a Les Paul Supreme. You're like, how many freaking Supremes do they make? Not many, but they make a gajillion overseas. Anyway, so you find the guitar that you like. So Craigslist is one. Facebook Marketplace has some amazing advantages, but it also has some downsides. Facebook Marketplace is awesome because it's tied to real people with real Facebook pages. You can check and see, you can make sure that people are legit. It's really good. The other one I tried for a couple of years, I played around with like OfferUp, and each time there's kind of a new like clear out your house app, I'll check those out and see if I can find cool guitars and gear. Anyway, so there's lots of places you can find them. And then the first thing you're going to do, so once you identify something that you like, and that's a whole other component to this, out of my my lane. So this morning I was on Craigslist in New Orleans, which is a freaking treasure trove. If you want to hurt your heart and your feelings, just go to neworleans.craigslist.com and look around at what stuff comes up. There are hundreds of listings every day, and so much of it is great stuff. Yesterday, a 54 J45 popped up. I called the guy, and I filmed my conversation. So his price was crazy, and I kind of wanted to hear why his price was so high. But he also was the second owner. He's owned that guitar for 50 years. Anyway, so once you find the guitar that you want to buy, you need to make an offer, or you need to at least reach out in the first place. And this is where I think a lot of people overthink this. They write these long books of like, I'm so excited about your guitar. I would love to own it. My grandpa told me that these guitars are wonderful. If you give too much information, they're going to know that you're really into this, and they're not going to come off the price at all. So I think short, sweet, and contact information. I think that's the main things that you need to give them. Like, super cool guitar. I'd love to talk about this. Would you be interested, or would you entertain an offer around? And I typically look either at market value, what they're going for, or I'll then back up and just run it into kind of what I want to pay for it, what I think they're worth, if I'm going to keep it or if I'm going to flip it eventually. I usually kind of shuffle the deck. So I don't typically buy stuff like at retail price. But so your first email just needs to be short, sweet, and give them your contact information. So this morning I've got two things lined up that I think I might go ahead and scoop up. One is a Reverend. It's this weird telly body with a resonator and a P90. Seems very cool. I can get for $400. I think that should be a $600 guitar or so, and it's just super cool. I'm looking for something fun and open tuning slide. I keep meaning to get into slide, and so anyway, so that's one. The other one is I sent an email this morning. There was a cool Silvertone. It's a 1610, I think. So it's an 8-inch. No, it's a 10-inch speaker, but it's got a square looking speaker baffle, and it's a little 18-watt amp. Super cool. Made by Silvertone in the 60s. Cool little combo. They're getting really hot. So I sent an email. He's asking $750, and I just I have $450 cash in my pocket, which is in the thumbnail of this picture. But yes, I have cash in my pocket. I don't have as much cash as he wants, but I was just kind of fishing a bit. So I sent an email saying like, hey, I know that it's not what you're asking, but I would like to own this. I have 450. Let me know, Jeremy. And then I gave him my phone number. And he texted me back within a couple minutes and said, hey, I can't quite do that, but I could do 550. Which, think about that. Like, he just came off $200 off the price. So, for me, I'm like, 550, that's cool. I can definitely, like, I could probably swing that. So that's another one. So once you find what you want, your first email, like I said, short, sweet contact information. Don't give away too much information. Don't say that you like the guitar particularly. And that's all just kind of being savvy in negotiation. Because if you want it, they're not going to, if he wants it, there's a high exchange rate on phrases like want, dream, love. All of those things are going to make this guitar more expensive. So then once you agree generally on price, I typically mostly agree on price before I get there. I don't like coming into a deal where they think I'm going to pay full price and I only have 80% of that in my pocket, because that just leads to people getting frustrated and annoyed and walking away. So I think then you need to set the terms. So once you have an email back and forth, hey, would you take this price? Yeah, I can do that price. Then you set the terms. Okay, I'd like to meet at this place. And here are a couple things like, and I have gotten myself into dumb situations. I told a story a couple weeks ago on the live show about my scariest deal, where I had a bunch of cash in my pocket and I went to a guy's house with no cell phone service. No one knew where I was. It's way back in the mountains. And the dude, he didn't quite threaten me, but it was a scary and intense situation. So to alleviate that, I said so again. To alleviate that, you need to tell somebody where you're going. You need to set up really clear expectations. So Walmart parking lots work well. Any place that's public, if it's good weather, and now with the added component of social distancing, if you can keep a mask on, you also need to set that up in the terms before you get together. So as you're in that email, hey, I'd like to meet at Barnes and Noble parking lot. I'll be driving the kind of color car. I'll be bringing cash, and then there's one caveat you need to put in your email, which is I'll bring this much cash with the understanding that the car is as described, and we can figure out if it's not. That just gives you a little bit of protection when you get there, and it's because most people are not photographers and they're not good at taking pictures of their own guitars, and that leads to guitars not being as represented in pictures or descriptions. So once you get it and you see there's a lot more pick guard wear, or there's a lot more fret wear, it needs some frets, it needs some repairs. That leads into the next thing. So once you actually get there, what do you need to look for when you open that guitar case or open the gig bag? What do you need to look for? For me, this is where my intuition goes full force. I have to really pick apart what my brain is doing, because it's just I've done it so much. I know exactly what to look for. So the first thing for me, so let's answer this question first with an electric guitar, and then we'll jump into an acoustic guitar. I open an electric guitar case. I'm going to look for a couple things. The first thing I'm going to look for on an electric guitar is for neck cracks and neck pocket. So if it's a Fender style guitar, I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to look at back where the neck comes into the body. I'm going to look for those little hair cracks. They're not the end of the world, but it is sometimes indicative of necks being on and off a bunch of times. If they're over tightened, then those would crack. Not a structural thing, but what happens is that's going to show me more about the life of this guitar. Has the neck been off a bunch of times? So that would show either like it's a different neck from a different body, or the body swapped, or there's truss rod issues and they've had to loosen it and fix the truss rod if it's a vintage style with the truss rod in the neck, in the bottom of the neck, not in the headstock. The other thing I'm going to look for is hardware original. Actually, before I would look at that, I would look at the finish. So I'm going to look for dings, dents, scratches, blemishes, any finish work, any touch-up work. Bad news. Money's coming off if there's finish work that was not disclosed. So you look for it. There's always the normal dings, on a Strat. There's pretty much always a ding on the bottom down by where the guitar plugs in. So you look over the finish, look for cracks, look for hazes, scratches, all that kind of stuff. Looked at the chat, got distracted again. But yeah, so you look over the guitar, then I'm going to start looking at hardware. And the number one predictor of like electric guitars are tricky because there's so much going on inside the guitar that you don't necessarily know about. Have they swapped the pickups? Have they swapped the hardware? Did they route it out for humbuckers if it's a Strat? Yada, yada, yada. One of the telltale signs, look at all of the screws on the pickguard and look at the pickup screws. If the pickup screws have a bunch of wear, if they are, if they're kind of dinged out, dug out where someone used, too big of a screwdriver, that's a really good, that's a good piece of information because that will show you that this guitar, someone's been messing with the pickups. They've taken the pickups in and out. They've put new ones in. It's not always bad, but more information is always more helpful in making a decision, an informed decision. So look at the pickguard screws, look at the pickup screws, and then I'm going to go to the headstock. I'm going to look if it's a Gibson style guitar. I'm going to look for a neck crack up there. Look for the little smiley face on the back of the neck. Then I'm going to look at the tuners. I'm going to make sure that the tuners are original, that everything's tight, nothing's like. Look for those little nylon washers. Old Grovers are especially bad about this. Those will crack up and then the tuners will get loose and then people will over tighten the tuners coming in. And so if the tuners are really tight, that's another good one. So that's generally an electric guitar. And then just look for general signs of use, wear, abuse, or misuse. And all of that will then kind of let you either confirm the deal, it's either good as stands or you need to renegotiate. It's pretty rare that I actually renegotiate. Recently, so I did a video about, I tried to buy a Guild from the 1981. It was a Guild D25. And I was super excited about this guitar and I got there and it was so much worse than she had described, which is not bad. It's just not good pictures. And I was like, I am so sorry. I have to pass on this guitar. And because I knew like I'm not even again. I think she wanted to be at 750 and I was at 600. And even then for me at 600 for a guitar that beat up and that ugly. Yeah. Other things that are interesting while we're talking about it. So electric guitars, and it's funny, it's cool. So Rhett and Zach on the Dipped in Tone podcast talked about this today, that better pickups, better hardware on a guitar rarely increases the actual value of that guitar used. No one is going to pay more because there's a Seymour Duncan in an HSS Strat. No one, myself included. But I will, like, there are people who are opportunistic and know this because they will buy that guitar, then they'll swap it out to a cheap, whatever it should have been, and then they'll sell that pickup separately for $40, $50. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You can also find really good stuff if you find guitars with, Seymour Duncan or whatever. If you can get them at the same price as their stock counterparts, you'll get some really good hardware. And you get some cool, I did that a couple years ago. I bought a Tex-Mex Strat, and was it a Tex-Mex? What do they? No, I forget what they call that. A Nashville Strat that had a quarter pounder in the bridge, a Seymour Duncan quarter pounder in the bridge and the neck, and then it had a 57 custom shop Strat pickup in the middle, which was such a cool. It was a cool and strange combo, like a pretty mild middle pickup with very aggressive bridge and neck, but very cool in the end. Yes, hold on. Cool. I'll come back to this in a second. So, so once you get there, so now let's run through an acoustic guitar. What would you look for when you open an acoustic guitar case if you're thinking about buying this guitar? Acoustic guitars, the first thing you have to look for. Look for finish cracks. Look for cracks in the body. Look for the pickguard curling up. Look for the action. That's probably the next most important information. Grab the guitar, flip it up, look across the strings, and then you'll see, if the action is really high, it's time to walk away. Other things on acoustic guitars, pretty much always you're going to get bridge pins swapped. You'll get tuners swapped. Neither of those make the guitar worth that much more. That's not sometimes people will pay more. I have had more experience with people paying more for good tuners. So if it started life with perceivably inferior quality, if it started life with Goto closed gear tuners, and you put Waverleys on there, maybe Grovers. Grovers aren't that big of a deal, but Waverleys, because they're like $200, could be a big deal. So once you have set the terms, you met up, you told somebody where you're going, you're in the parking lot, you flip the case open, you've looked at the guitar, and now you're okay with it. It's as you described. So there's two choices here. One, you either need to renegotiate, which rarely goes well, but sometimes it's not going to move the needle a ton. Um, but you can say like, hey, this just isn't what I thought it was. Would you be okay with $50 less? You're not going to get much more than probably a 10% swing at this point. But yeah, especially if you see like it's a Strat and the bridge pickup, you have reason to ask. Also, use the information you find along the way to ask questions. So if you see that all the pickguard screws are kind of chewed up, you can say, hey, has this guitar, have you swapped any pickups? What's the story with the hardware? Any routes, anything under the pickguard? And then they'll be like, oh, I got this from my cousin Reggie. He's always messing with stuff, so I don't know. All of a sudden, you're like, well, is Reggie good at building guitars? Like, probably should have said that beforehand. So, use information to ask better questions, and then that'll be really helpful, and you'll get to, um, yeah, it's all super helpful. So then it comes to now we are into final negotiation. Like the deal is as we said, or we need to change. And then you say, okay, I've got cash. Here you go. You hand them the cash. They count it. While you're counting it, that is your last possible second that you get to say anything. Because what's that phrase? Someone used it. Caveat. Oh, there's some Roman law phrase. It says like the buyer alone is responsible for the state or condition of for making sure that it's good, that it's fair, and then after the deal, it's over. Like um, yeah, I've had a handful of people email me a couple days afterwards and say, "Hey, like I just, somebody I left the listing up and somebody offered me more money. If I could, I'd like to get the guitar back." And I just told them like, "No freaking way. Get out of here." Or I just don't even respond to the email. That's crazy. I've had that happen two times I can remember. Which is like, "Hey, I didn't sell it for enough to you. Can I have it back at the same price you bought it so that I can sell it to another guy?" No, man. Get out of here. Caveat emptor. Yep, that's the phrase. Yeah, I hadn't heard that before. Eric, maybe it was you. Um, Somebody said it on on my video of Reverb, uh, where Reverb is bad about this, very bad. I had a guitar. It was a '67 Gibson ES 175. I had written a thorough description, like much longer than I normally write because this guitar had a lot of issues. And so I said, hey, like this guitar has 3 noticeable issues, has a saggy top, has an old neck repair, has the top is a little sunken. Maybe I already said that. Saggy top, loose neck, low action. Or high bridge, low action. And the guy got the guitar. He had it for 2 weeks. It was past the return time. He said he loved the guitar, and all of a sudden, Reverb Resolutions reaches out saying that I sold him a guitar without describing it, and I could tell they hadn't even read the description. And I said, read the description and the return policy. He had 2 weeks. It's passed. It's done. It's closed. And Reverb continued. That was the deal that sealed it. I left Reverb, and I've dabbled with Reverb since, but I feel bad for individuals. So for me, I've since then kind of grown my own following to where now people want to buy guitars that I have, which is helpful. And I don't have to use Reverb, but I think a lot of people are still stuck that really have to use Reverb. Let the buyer beware, caveat emptor. Oh, you want to hear? Okay, bad deals that I've lost money. I've only lost money on 2 guitars. in thousands of buying. And I don't say, because it's not, so I lost, the most money I've lost is about $1,500. And I bought it on, uh, it was a 1966 Gretsch Country Gentleman. And I got it and I loved that guitar. I thought it was so cool. But it had a pretty gnarly neck repair that I didn't quite know, or I knew it was there, but I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know that it needed anything more. So it ended up basically like when the neck crack happened, it also messed up the truss rod. And so I ended up having to put a new truss rod in it. So I ended up getting just way upside down in it. So this is when, um, yeah, I had $1,500 in it. And at that time, hang on, I forget the details. It's been a long time. I was probably 19 when this deal happened. Forget the detail. I lost about $1,500 on it because I had to pay so much money to like get the neck totally like redone, finish work, and ended up selling it for about $1,000. I forget how the details worked out. I've blocked that out of my mind because I hate losing. Hate it. The other guitar that I lost money on was a 1964 Guild D40. Um, and that was my first guitar my first vintage guitar I ever owned. I was 18 when I bought it. Amazing, cool guitar, and ugliest guitar I've ever seen simultaneously. It had been refinished by a guy with a paintbrush, and he just like put shellac, like true whatever bug guts shellac over the whole guitar. And it was like gooey and thick and just kind of like the top just kind of blended into the bridge. It was ugly and terrible. And it needed a neck reset, and nobody would touch it because the finish was so bad. And then it had a 5-piece neck. And so people just wouldn't mess with it. But I loved that guitar. That's where my love for guilds came from. But years too. Um, I'm incredibly fortunate that I haven't lost money on more guitars. I have a pretty good walk away factor. Like I will very much walk away. Um, well, okay, so I do have another story. When Reverb was first starting, I was finding that the way that they were categorizing things wouldn't catch, like lots of things could slip through uh could slip through. So I found someone that put the brand of a guitar. It was a 62 D18, and the guy, instead of putting Martin guitars and it being put in the category with Martin, it ended up getting put into CF Martin. So it was like a separate, you could look at that, look for a manufacturer listed as CF Martin, and there would be 3 or 4 guitars across the thousands that they were selling. And it's just people that didn't quite know, or I don't know how it slipped through the cracks. It wasn't opportunistic on them, but it was just opportunistic on the tool they were using to sell. So I bought a D18, a 62 D18, and it said it had mild finish repair on the top. And what they said was that, like, because it was really scratched up, and it said like where in front of the pick guard below the neck on the front bout, that this guitar had some finish work. And I got the guitar, and it had a fully, completely, total refinish on the top. And they had sanded the finish off, but they left some of the dirt in like the rut. So in a picture on the internet, on my phone, it looked like, a ruddy, cool, worn relict kind of vintage finish. And it ended up being like totally not right. I got there and it was just like dead flat, smooth, shiny, and then the back and sides had a ton of overspray. And so it was just completely not what the guy described it as. I asked for a refund. He said he'd give me 5% off, like a 5% partial refund. And I said, no freaking way. And that's when I knew Reverb, like I could call. It's like, hey, I need to talk to, and there were a couple guys that worked there, and I could just call them and I could have their phone number directly. And I say, hey, here's the deal. Well, here's what's going on. And they'd be like, oh, that's fine. We'll have them take it back. So they took that one back, but I ended up, I didn't lose anything, but it terrified me because I paid $2,000 for the guitar, which I thought was a good deal, but it's not a good deal for a guitar that needs like total refin work. And it was bad and ugly. It also had a different bridge than they told me. Because I could tell that it was a luthier who didn't know what they were doing because they put a straight bridge in an early 60s where it should have been slanted. So the intonation was way off. So anyways, that's like the closest I've ever been. So, okay, I'll poke in here a couple questions, then we'll pick up again at the end of the guitar deals. I'll have to think it through if there's anything more to say or think about this. Buyers beware. We want to hear some stories. So there are some stories of me losing on guitars. And now your first guitar purchase was an American Strat from pawn shops on eBay, and it came with a strip truss rod. Ooh, had to swap that like $400 later. That sucks. Piezo on a telly with a Bigsby. Is that possible? Years ago, I'm sure they still make it. Fishman and who else? Shirtler used to make one too. You could put a telly bridge. You could do a telly bridge with a piezo pickup in it with a Bigsby. It should work. It probably won't work as well. Okay, so piezos need pressure on them to get the acoustic guitar sound. And so usually that's going to be the strings going into the rear block, and that gives you as much energy transfer into the mass of the block that would then give you the acoustic tone. But if instead of going into the block, you go straight through in like a through saddle to a Bigsby, it might work. Maybe. I think it'll work. I don't think it would sound great. I think that's a weird feature set that I don't think you could do both. At the same time, I've seen other guitars where. Anyway, that's a weird one. Okay, well, man, what a weird question. That's good though. P.S. Thanks for the anthem advice. Sounds genuine to the guitar. Yes. First acoustic pickup I've really enjoyed. That's great, man. Yeah, they sound. That's my soapbox for acoustic guitar pickups. I want them to sound like the actual guitar that they're in. I don't want them to sound like a good guitar in a studio with a microphone. You know, if you spend thousands of dollars, you want it to sound like your actual guitar. It's the same reason that most people don't like EMGs in their electric guitars, is that they don't sound. They sound, you could have a $150 Schecter or a $2,500 Kirk Hammett, and they will sound the same. That doesn't mean they'll play the same. Doesn't mean that you can do the same thing. I'm going to change this camera angle because it's driving me crazy. There we go. It's less like. That's not level. Somebody was talking about my channel the other day with me, and they told me that they can tell that my personality is that of someone who thinks that anything worth doing is worth overdoing. You're not wrong. I just have strong preferences. Like, I want things to be cool and good. Eric, did I ever buy that 1936 0018? I did not. Very cool guitar. It's still at the Fret Mill. Is that? Yeah, Fret Mill in Roanoke, which they actually just changed ownership. They have a new owner. I'm super excited to go see them. It's just I haven't been able to go. I don't know if anybody's been able to go anywhere too much recently. But I'd like to go. 0018s are magical. Pre-war Martins are awesome. But that guitar had too storied of a history. It basically was like a total salvage. Like, if it was a car, it would have had a salvage title. Where you're like, yes, it's a Ferrari, but it was underwater, and it was entirely, taken down from like the frame all the way down. So with that one, it's like, hey, we had some parts and pieces that got really smashed up and broken, but we used some of them to put the guitar back together. So anyway, bad deals. I've had scary deals. Paul says, how do you handle ridiculous offers or just ignore? I like to say, is that a down payment? That's funny. So I think you're right. I think Um, humor in negotiation works well. Like I was today I was kind of working. I was sending a bunch of offers on stuff, trying to find stuff to buy, and then somebody sends me a message and says, "Oh, I'll take. Hey, this is Kevin with the amp. I can do that." And then I couldn't remember, and I couldn't quickly track down like which amp. I've offered like 15 things today, and I ended up sending a GIF. I was like, "Which amp? I've been busy this morning," and I sent a GIF of a cat smacking a keyboard. Um, so when somebody offers me something super low, I'll just say no. That's one of the most powerful tools you have as a seller. When people, you have a guitar that you can show, that's a caveat. We'll come back to that. When you have a guitar that you can show, the market bears this range, 800 to 1200. And then somebody comes in at $600 and you're like, "Oh, that's nice." But you can just say, "No, thanks." The other thing is you information deflates lowballers. So, people typically lowballing are thinking you're a little old lady or a high school kid or somebody that just doesn't know what you have, doesn't know what it's worth. And so they're just trying to kind of get the best of you. So be wary. Yeah, I try to be funny with it. I'll just say no, or I'll be funny. Um, or I can just say, I'll just ask like, "Hey, like, tell me more about how'd you come up with that number?" That's been my new favorite question to ask people. How'd you come up with that number? Because what I'm realizing is that most people are just kind of making stuff up. They don't know, and they know a lot, and they know that no one ever gets them at that price. Even I don't do that. Like I don't lowball people. Like I come in and I say like, "Hey, like I won't pay hour." And so it's just a question of how much will you discount for that? And then the other component is that, and you've all heard this, the guitars are only worth what someone's willing to pay. So if you are willing to pay, then that's what that guitar is worth. Now, if you have more time, if there's other variables, if you have more time or you're willing to ship or people who are looking for that kind of guitar, I'm sure you'd get more. And that's where like you have to be careful to not be arrogant. Like one time I kind of told a guy, um, it was an older Martin. It was a D28, 70s D28, not super desirable. And he said, "Well, like I think it's worth $3,500." I was like, "It's not worth 3,500. It might be worth 2,500 if you know the right people." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, like I mean, uh and then I kind of painted myself into a corner where I said like, "Well, I know people that you don't." And it just came off very very cocky that I could sell that guitar for more money. So, anyway, um Max, the Rosewood Bridge we were wondering about on Facebook is actually ebony. What? Maybe. It looks very strange. But they're luthiers. They know what they're talking about. So, Max, is your name actually Maximilian? Which I think it is. Um, Max lives in Germany. There is a guitar in Denmark, I think. Brussels, Belgium. Belgium. There was a guitar in Belgium owned by a luthier and his son. They had repaired it. They were selling it. It's like a 2000 or 90s D28. And the bridge just looked so ebony. Sorry, looked so much like rosewood. And if you look on the spec sheet for Martins, for D28s, they've always been ebony. But I have seen 28s with rosewood bridges. Not a bunch, but it's not crazy. Um, and but as far as official production goes, they've never done it. So maybe special editions, maybe employee models. I don't know. There's a bunch of reasons that it could be. Um, yeah, they're hoping you're down on your luck. Oh man, so I'll talk about this. Buying and selling guitars, you will come across some of the worst kinds of people. Um, one of the things I've been trying to buy while I'm down here, it is cool and it is absurd, which I love absurdity. Like, that's just something. If you want to know who Jeremy Sheppard is, I think absurdity is hilarious, and I think it's awesome. And so there is a PV vintage amp from the 1970s. It's a tweed cabinet. It is 6 10-inch speakers, and it's 120 watts. So this is preposterous, absurd, giant. It's like, but I'm into it. I think it would be cool. I don't know what I would ever do with it, but the guy wants $700. And so this is okay. So two things: one, my favorite question recently, and two, the worst kinds of people to deal with in guitar buying and selling. So first, I don't know where he came up with $700. Like, it is a giant amp in a time in which no one is buying amps. It is an amp that can play to 1,000 people without monitors. Again, no one is playing to 1,000 people in an arena right now. So I just asked him, like, hey, how'd you come up with your price? Because it's just a super high price. It doesn't match the other ones that we've seen sell. Now, there aren't many, but the handful that have sold between like $400 to $600. So I'm like, I'm just wondering, why are you so much higher? And he swapped all the speakers, which is good. They're all Jensen C10s, which I don't like that speaker very much, but it's kind of a dark amp. Those are really bright speakers. Maybe it'll work. So anyway, I've been trying to kind of, I've been asking questions, and what's interesting is this dude definitely was not, um, he was not gracious or patient at all. He did not want to answer any questions about it. He just wanted somebody to show up with money and take this amp. And so the thing is, you just don't get all of those things at the same time. Like, you don't get to tell me, like, you're asking too many questions and get full price. So I just asked him, I was like, hey, super cool amp. Did you swap the speakers? And then he's like, yeah, I swapped the speakers in 2012. 5 years, I know what I'm doing. I was like, oh, that's cool. Uh, and then I just asked him, I was like, hey, how'd you come up with the price? And then that's when he just like started getting sassy. I mean, he was kind of sassy from the beginning. But then at the end, what did he say? And I ended up being a little snarkier than I meant to be. Um, let me see if I can find this. It was a while ago. I might not be able to find it. Okay, here it is. I said, I'd like to buy your PV. Could you do 450? I know it's not what you're asking, but I can get it today. It's amazing and huge. So remember, like, my thing was like short, sweet, and contact information. So like, I gave him information and what he needed, and he said, which PV? So he's selling a couple. So said the 16. He said, I can't do that. He said he can't do that. This amp is impossible to find in a 610 combo. 700 is what I have in it. Because I think he put like $500 of speakers into it, right? They're like $100 a piece. But so I said, I said, but it, like, he said, anyway. So I said, but it's also gigantic, and not many people are wanting to buy twins, more over 610s. It's totally cool, and I'm into it, but mostly for the novelty. That's probably what he didn't like. And I said, what's your best price? He said, $700. I'm not going any lower. One of these amps sold on Reverb for, or one of these sold on Reverb for $1,000, and this amp has had a cap job recently. You're not going to find another one. Here's the thing: the one that sold for $1,000, it sold in Italy last summer. It and the thing with Reverb is they don't show you what it actually sells for. They just show it was before the listing was ended. So he was asking with $400 shipping, which I do not believe for a moment that someone paid that much, especially like in Italy in the summer of 2020. So I said, I see one in Italy for $1,000. Thanks, man. Like, I'd love to own it, but I don't think it's worth $700. Thanks for getting back to me. I can do 500 and I'll come pick it up today. And he said, that's your opinion. I've sold one of these before, so I know what they're worth. Thanks for wasting my time. That's the line. When people who are selling stuff are not gracious at all, that's one thing that you have to be in spades. You have to be patient. If you're not patient, you probably shouldn't be in sales, because, and if you think that your time is more important than others, and if people waste it, then, like, you are running your life at a deficit. that's a problem. Like if you're in sales, you have to be like, most of my time will be wasted, but occasionally I will land a big thing that will more than make up for it. So what's funny is I was skimming his text, and so he ended up with saying, "Thanks for wasting my time." And I didn't mean to. I thought he said, "Thanks for offering," or "Thanks for your offer." So my response was, "Sure thing, anytime." And then he called me an MF. So it went a little sideways. I emailed him later because no one else is interested in this thing, but I'd be interested in it. So anyway, Rosary Bridge was actually on Facebook is actually evident different. Hoping you're down in your luck. Yes, it is. Oh man, hanging around the unofficial Martin Guitar Forum is the best cure for not having good info on Martins. Guys, I love Martin and I love Martin guitars, and I hate. Nope, I see very little value in the unofficial Martin Guitar Forum. It's just a bunch of old dudes that just like strong, usually wrong opinions. So anyway, I will walk carefully because I know that a lot of my crowd is also in that crowd. I see. I've been on a couple times. The other one I really don't like. I don't like most is the guitar subreddit. Is just a waste of time and space for most guitar players, and it's a really bad thing for young new guitar players because it's just lots of bullies and jerks. So, oh yeah, a Fender Reverb Super 6. Good lord, giant, heavy, amazing. Yeah, I mean, because it's interesting. Like a super reverb is cool, and no one thinks it's that crazy, and it's 410s. So why wouldn't you get? Because Fender did the Super 6. They also did, was it a quad? What did they call it? It's in the 70s. It was 412s, and then PV was the king of absurdity, which I think is why I still love PV. Like I just love ridiculous. Like what if it had 12 6L6s and was 400 watts? Like some of those Marshall PV head or Marshall PA heads that people play. Good lord. I think Bonamassa has a couple. Um yep. Hey, Alden, putting together your first pedal board. That's awesome, man. I'm working on I'm still way behind the game on pedal boards. Like I'd rather um oh, bring out the Breed Love. The Breed Love is no, the Breed Love is already sold. It sold last week, 2 weeks ago, before I left Harrisonburg. I haven't even put the video out on it. Like, that's how fast that one went. Like, I got an offer I could not say no to, and it got packed up and sent off, and it's great. That was a very cool guitar. Spec wise, it was so similar to my Waterloo that I just couldn't justify having both. And I got it just yeah. So I got it with the Nash for the J45 True Vintage. So I'm gonna sell that other one when I get back too. So I want to run through there are a couple Instagram questions, and then we'll close here in like 5 or 10 minutes. Oh boy, so many people wanting things, and let me go through here. So my screenshots. So um, there's no method on Instagram. Ever considered banjo hunting as well? I've hunted. I really like banjos, and I know a good bit about them. I get a good tenor 4-string open back banjo. My sister-in-law here in Covington in Louisiana has a really cool. It's like one of the old Japanese-made Epiphone banjos, and it's super cool. It's got basically a Gibson pot to it, and has a big brass tone ring. Very cool. I like banjos a lot. I wish I did more with them. They're just it's such a high entry point, you know. I just have to get used to throwing $2,500 into them. But if I could find a good RB 250, I recently saw an RB 100 long scale which talk about a weird, ridiculous banjo. Like it's just goofy because it's like the neck. It's like watching somebody play an SG. Um, oh, this is a great question. My friend Wes asked, "What's my favorite Mardi Gras song or tradition?" Um, I think my favorite Mardi Gras tradition. There's so okay. If you don't know Mardi Gras is millions of people normally, not this year, is millions of people coming into New Orleans, and it is almost entirely aimed at like kids and families. It is just like magical because it's lights and beads and fun, and especially once you get to where you know who's in what parade and what floats they're riding on. So there are all these different crews. So there's probably 40, there probably is more. There's probably like 40 couple crews. And so they'll have their own parades, they'll have their own floats. So the ones that we always loved, I love Endymion. So the crew of Endymion. And I love our local one here, which is the Mystic crew of Olympia. Just so cool. With Olympia, it's always fun because when we come back, even when we come back to just visit, the parade will go by. And it's always like guys wearing masks because Olympia is all men, and then there's another crew in town called Eve, and Eve is all women. But with Olympia, it's just like all these guys that I like knew from like church or work or business or buying and selling guitars, playing ultimate frisbee or frisbee golf, not ultimate. But yeah, so my favorite Mardi Gras tradition is, I mean, just parades. Is that it feels like a pretty cheap answer. Um, I also love like the communal component and like I love hearing my kids yell, "Throw me something, mister." We were driving through town yesterday and I saw a sign since so there are all these houses and businesses that have decorated themselves as Mardi Gras floats since coronavirus, and we're not on one of the signs. It says it says "Throw me a vaccine, mister," which is so funny. My favorite Mardi Gras song is I love the Hank Williams Jambalaya. It's so good. Like, you gotta go, me oh my oh, son of a gun, gonna have big fun. So good. My kids love it. And there's 1,000 different versions of it. It is like the sound of South Louisiana when you're going to like a fair. You will hear that bass line like boom, chicka boom, chicka boom, chicka boom. It's so good. So, dot dot eight on Instagram asked me, do you recommend the GS Mini or the Orangewood Brooklyn Live Junior? I'd go GS Mini. You can get the GS Mini Koa, Humana Humana. That's a great guitar, but it's the GS Minis are like pound for pound awesome, but they're also really expensive. So they are a ton of guitar and they're also a bunch of money. So that's pretty good. Yeah, you gotta. That's the ratio you always have to keep in mind. Also, I love Orange Woods, but the Taylor will have a higher resale value if you ever decide like that guitar's a little small for me. It's a little different sound that I want, because that's usually a guitar like guitar is either a great starter guitar and then you learn and you get something bigger, or you're already an accomplished guitar player and you get something a little smaller. It won't work as well with you probably forever unless you're Ed Sheeran, and then you just always love. They're not even single lots; they're like a 2 size. Ballast 3 says, "What do you think about upgrading guitar pins, ebony or metal? Thanks." You will get 1 to 2% difference in tone. You get if you're breaking strings, you might get some difference. You will not really get more tuning stability with new bridge pins on an acoustic guitar. If your guitar, the only time I'd really do it is if you have a guitar that's quite dark and you want more highs. The denser the material, this is my experience, this is all anecdotal. This contract is not legally binding. Um, in my experience, the denser materials you use, tusk, bone, ebony, make your guitar sound brighter. But you can also use that sounded very Obama brighter. Um, but they make your guitar sound a lot brighter. And then with that, you can also pair that with the strings that you use. The biggest tone, if you're trying to change your guitar tone, change your guitar strings. You're going to bounce between like the main two, which are Foster Bronze or 8020. If you don't like either of those, you can try Nickel Bronze, you can try Manel, you can try aluminum bronze. All of those are going to be really good. They would all be really good and helpful. And then the last thing, if you really want to change your guitar tone, I would go for a guitar pick. Try some really good guitar picks, and you will hear a big difference. And then you can also play with how your hand sits, because if your pick is very flat across the string, it's going to be really splashy, and you'll get a lot of that, like tick, 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 tick. You'll hear the pick a lot more. So anyway, bridge pins are okay. Usually, it's more if you just want to change the aesthetic. That's good. Favorite string brands for both acoustic and electric. This is Sam Chung over here in the chat. Favorite string brands for both acoustic and electric. Favorite for electric guitar. I love Ernie balls. I think Ernie ball is so fun. I also like D'Addarios. I like the Fender Pure Nickels. I also love String Joy. Bada bing, bada boom. String Joy strings are so good, but they're just pricey enough that I feel like I'm like treating myself to them, but they don't last as long. And I also I have 20 years of playing Ernie balls behind me. Like I have played Ernie ball 10s on most guitars since I was 14, 19 years ago. But I love the Broadways are so cool. And some I just love String Joy for it's like the same thing with JHS, like bringing history back in a meaningful and compelling way, and then making some of those things available again, like with JHS and all the fuzzes. I think that's so cool. And then on the flip side, I think with String Joy bringing back certain acoustic guitar strings, the Broadways, even though the round core are crazy and complicated compared to hex core, like their innovation has been really good for a lot of guitar strings. So on acoustic guitars, I think acoustic guitars, show where my brain is just running out of RAM to hold on to stray thoughts that started in other places. Acoustic guitar strings, I prefer phosphor bronze and I prefer coated strings. On my guitar right now, these are super secret strings that I think Scott might be okay with me talking about from String Joy. So these are their String Lab. They're coated acoustics. I love them, and I'm someone who I've played like Elixir coated, Martin Lifespan, D'Addario EXP. These are so much better than the D'Addario EXPs. I've had them on there for 6 or 8 weeks now. They sound killer. The coating it feels very different. Doesn't feel like a sticky thing that's on there. Feels much denser. He said it's some kind of ceramic voodoo something. He talked about it on Mark Thompson's show. You should check out. In a couple weeks I'll be on. I think 2 weeks from now, I'll be on Mark Thompson's show At Home with Mark, which I'm super excited and humbled to be on. I'll send out the link. I'll share that as it gets closer. But bring out the breed love. Talked about that. Are the sort of guitars sold? So Gary, I think you asked this question last week. I didn't quite understand it. The North American guitar, very pricey boutique guitars over 6 or 7. Are they better and will they sell? Sorry, the computer's kind of far from me. Will they sell on later? Greetings from England, Gary. Boutique guitars tend to lose the most value of any other guitar. This is anecdotal. I'm gathering information on this, but I've looked like my Husson Dalton was 44 and some change. I got it for $2,000. Now I probably didn't get it for market value. Probably got it considerably below market value. But even if you do the math on 4,400 to 2,500, it's a pretty big jump. I think it was. I'll have to go back and look at the video from when I got it a while ago, but it's like 41% depreciation on that guitar. This guitar, this Waterloo is a boutique guitar made in Austin, Texas. It started life at $2,500. I bought it for $1,500. What's that math? What's 1,500 divided into 2,500? That'll show you the percentage of decrease. Compared to like a Martin D28 right now. If you bought a D28 for $28.99 and then you sold it, you could probably get $2,000 out of it. So $2,000 to $2,900. That's a much smaller decrease. So boutique guitars, in my experience, have a much lower resale value, which also means if you're interested in a boutique guitar, you should buy used guitars. You will have much less choice on materials and features and finish. But if someone's trying to get out of one, you can usually make your dollar go a lot farther. Thoughts on 60s made or Japanese nylon string Takaminis? Um, they are guitars. They are good. Early Takaminis are really wonderful classical guitars. I know a lot of players really enjoy them. I have heard, I don't know how much of this is true, heard that there's a strong connection that Martin was connected to the beginning of building guitars in Japan in the 1960s. And basically, like they named it because they were made at the base of the Takamine Mountains. It's going to be, and I've heard that that's somewhat connected to how Sigma came about, because Sigma is another Japanese-made guitar, officially licensed by Martin. Yada yada yada. Yeah, old classicals are great. Um, I mean, anything, if you get to a solid top is such a substantial difference that above that, it's not as big of a deal. When I get back to Virginia, I'm going to hang out with my friend Chris at Virginia Guitarist on YouTube. He is, or on Instagram. He's an amazing guitar player, and he knows so much about just high end, crazy classicals like double tops and like proper Spanish heel construction and just totally absurd classical guitars that are thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that I just don't know much about. And so he's always been really generous. Hey, Bo Barber. Oh, do I have any experience with Froggy Bottom guitars? I do. I They are such incredible quality. Um, there was a guy that I knew when I worked in a guitar shop in my early 20s. He had three. He had one that was like basically a triple O 28, and I just think their logo, their style, their construction, the way they do their braces is really impressive when you really get inside and look at how they build their braces. They're very tall and very, you can tell that each one is very much formed by hand. They sound wonderful. Big fan. 70s nylon Gibson. Oh boy. Sorry, Bo. 70s Gibsons are rough. Gibson nylons are quite rough. You can also, is yours one of the ones that has like the proper book headstock? Those are cool. And yours probably got away from, probably didn't have double X bracing. It sounds pretty good. But yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's cool, man. I think I have a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap up. Mitch. So Mitch Horner asked, "What are your thoughts on crazy expensive acoustic guitar cases?" Or he said just guitar cases. So if you're looking at like what Calton, or some of those other brands, like you'll have these guitar cases that are $1,500. They're fiberglass or they're carbon fiber or they're usually fiberglass, and they're like flame proof and waterproof, and they're they have a gasket in them so they can maintain humidity. I mean, they are the perfect tool for a full-blown traveling musician. Like if you're a traveling musician who doesn't have a road crew, you're not traveling with like stuff in a trailer, you're flying and stuff's in the bottom of a plane and it's just you and you're carrying it and it's heavy, or you need it to be lighter. It's a perfect solution. But to do all of those things makes it quite expensive. To get one that is that tough, that temperature proof, uh, and also because usually you would just do it in like an ATA rated like a flight case. Do a proper full blown heavy ass case and ship it, or like put it in the back of a in the back of a trailer or a truck. But to me, I think it is the perfect solution for a problem that most guitar players don't have. um I think if you get to where your gigging stuff is too heavy, um like if your guitar case is too heavy, or if it doesn't have enough storage or any of those things, you can find other solutions that are helpful. I think a really good mono bag would be a great one. Um, Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not saying don't buy one, but like I said, I think earlier that's the best I could probably say it is it's a brilliant solution to a problem that most guitar players don't experience. But if you are, do it. Like I have a couple followers that always kind of send me pictures of their Carlton and like really nice form fit fiberglass cases. I'm not in that place. I would like to get one just because it's kind of a status symbol. Like it's a cool thing, and people know that you take yourself real seriously. But I wouldn't be too into it. All right, couple more questions. James Olson. Yes, I love James Olson. I was offered a gig to go and work for James, work for Jim, learn how to build guitar. It was a weird deal. Like he knew a friend that I could stay in his in their like guest bedroom, and then I would work during the day, or no, I'd work at night at a food line at a grocery store. And he's like, and then I'll teach you how to build guitars during the day. But he also wanted like a really serious non compete that you couldn't build guitars in his style within 1,000 miles for 5 years or something, which wasn't too big of a problem. But at the same time, too, I was trying to figure out, do I want to build guitars? Do I want to keep working at a guitar shop selling guitars? And then at that time in my life, I was 20 probably when that happened, was right when my mom died. And I needed to stay and take care of my little brother who was a freshman in high school. And then I really thought I was going to be a pastor, or I thought I was going to go be a teacher. I went to school for special education. So anyway, I know James Olson and his guitars, they are amazing. I really like them. His is it, what's he call his? The Southern Gentleman. The it's the SJ is the one that James Taylor always plays, and they sound wonderful. They play great. They're quite expensive, and I don't think he's building them anymore. I don't believe. But uh, 1930s Kalamazoo guitars. Daniel Riccobono. Hey, buddy. Um, really into mandolin these days. I love mandolin. Um, yep. It's on. That's high on my hit list to find another good. I had a really good A style mandolin for a long time. I want an F style. I'd love an F2, an F5, but F5s are. I mean, it's $2,500 for any F5, really. Um, so Daniel asks, any experience with 1930s Kalamazoos? Yeah, I've seen a lot of Kalamazoos. Are you talking about mandolins? Or are you talking about just mandolin or just Kalamazoos in general? They're mandolins. I've played a couple, like kind of an A2 style. So oval hole, black finish, round A shape. They sound great. They have really good V-shaped necks, really good chunky necks. And they're a ton of value for the money. If you can get those. The only thing that sometimes people swap, the tuners are pretty rough on those. So usually you would keep the original tuners and then you can swap in new, Golden Era or whatever Stu Mac or Waverly tuners that you'd want to use. Um, yes, mucho money for Olson's. I think okay, so a KM21 F A hole. Hole A. I said A hole. Yeah, I've played similar things to that. I don't know if I know that model particularly, but they've all been great. I mean, the tricky part is don't buy them without playing them first. And who gets to play guitars right now? Like, not many stores are open for you to come play. Um so okay, I've got like one or two more questions. I keep saying that. I don't want to go too long, but it's fun when people are asking questions and you guys have stuff. Okay. What are my thoughts? So Sam Chung is asking, what are my thoughts on mass-produced guitar or pedals like Boss compared to boutique pedal makers? I think there's room. I think there's room for both, and I'm very glad for both. I know that it like because we're all in this thing. Like we don't know where this ends. Like we don't know, or if it ever ends. We know where it's going. So if you're my age, so I'm 33, almost 34. My first guitar pedal was an RP50, was a little Digitech 2-button 99 presets and an expression pedal. And it sounded like a turd. It just sounded bad. But it inspired me to then figure out like, oh, I want an overdrive. And so I got an overdrive pedal And then I got into other pedals. I got into delay pedals and chorus. And so it's cool gateway. So now I think that there's, especially when you start looking at the space between like you have like Moore that are and Tone, is it Tone City? Those like the super affordable, $30 pedals. I think they're so cool if you just want to try a sound. Like I just want to try an analog delay or want to try a digital delay and I don't know if I'm gonna like it. You can get that, and even if you hate it, it's like you went. I mean, just it's like the same thing as I went to a couple movies I didn't like. It's not bad. I think Boss still makes stuff. It's super cool seeing like collaborations, which I think maybe JHS is the only one to really lock that in. But it's interesting because there's room for all of them, and they all have different motivations. Like I know that like Zach Broyles has become a really good friend, and he's the way he builds pedals and his ethos for how he builds mythos is really amazing. He just wants to make the absolute best pedals he can. And so for him, like he's not going to hire a team yet. He's going to do it by himself as long as he can to make sure that they are the absolute best things he can offer. And then people are going to see it and they're going to pay attention. So it's interesting to see how it's going to play out over the next couple months, because he's in like what 5 months straight of Mjolnir's, his Klon type circuit, just selling out like the Wildwood Mjolnirs. You cannot find them. There is such a wait, and he is like 6 days a week. He's working on those, and I know he's doing chupacabras and all kinds of other pedals. But it's when someone who has lots of influence in guitar culture all of a sudden says, you have it. That's the stress. That's the strain. Where like, and he even swapped from like a proper, not proper, from a full blown hand wired pedal, which took him hours to do each one. And all of a sudden you have, a couple thousand to build. He's printed board. Tone got a little better, he said. So anyway, it's interesting. It's when the big guys, it's when the little guys start becoming medium guys, and medium guys start becoming big guys. Like JHS is now a really big pedal company. But you compare that to like Analog Man, that's still like right. It's just Mike for the most part, still building pedals. Um, so yeah. So do I like Eastman? I like Eastman. I don't ever get to play many of them. There are a handful of guitar shops around here that I'm going to try and go see if I can see them play them. Yeah. Gary from Yorkshire. That's the worst English accent we've ever heard, myself included. You have a chance to buy a 68 Yamaha FG140 red. Serial number seems to be, check out, 280 pounds. What's that in American dollars? That sounds like a good price. Those are going up and up and up and up. I had an FG180. I had an FG180 that had just sold for $500 a couple months ago. They sound awesome. They sound like a good D18, like a good Martin, and there's so much value. And the problem is that, or I would say, but they have, they can be really hard to play. The action gets really high on them. So make sure that you can play it, and the action isn't crazy. So Kevin, you said, do you know that Rhett Shull? Or no, do you know Rhett Shull? I do know Rhett Shull. I have his phone number. Yeah, Rhett, I was on his podcast a year and a half ago. Yeah, Rhett's, we're friends. And yeah, every now and then you'll see him wearing one of my t-shirts. I never bought any of his shirts, so maybe I should have. Yeah, Rhett's awesome, and he's such a talented guitar player. Tom, you made it. I'm just about to end, but I did thank you at the beginning. Hey, this is the perfect conclusion. This does not happen without support from patrons, and I'm incredibly thankful. So I have 4 ride or die patrons that are just trusted advisors to the channel and just amazing supporters. So Tom, you're one of them. So thanks, Tom. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Andy, and thanks, Gary. It's just so good to hear from all of you. If you want to support the channel, if you want to, yeah, Gary, I love. Oh, for sake. Yeah, but yeah, so this video doesn't happen without my patrons. If you want to support the channel, go to patreon.com/guitar hunter. $3 a month, you get early access to videos, you get Q&As with me to pick my brain. And then there's other tiers. There's if you get to the ride or die patrons, you're gonna get free merch when I launch new stuff. You're gonna get phone calls with me. There's a lot of great perks because I want you guys to have just a great, meaningful, full guitar playing life. So anyway, we're still in Louisiana for another week, maybe 2 weeks, and I'm gonna keep buying guitars and gear. I've got really cool videos coming out next week. Um, I've been able to make a lot of videos that I'm really proud of. I have one video coming out about Gibson. That is why Gibson is losing guitar players, and I'm excited for y'all to see it. So you'll see that coming out. I might do so this week. I did 3 videos. I might do 3 videos again next week because I'm the delay. It's like I'm getting to where there's like 2 or 3 weeks between like a thing happening and the video coming out. But this is super fun. I am so glad that you guys. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest accent, but yeah. So anyway, I am just so thankful for your support and glad we're in it together. Thanks for hanging out. Hope this helps you buy cool, amazing guitars. All right, have fun. I'm gonna play guitar for a minute, and then we're out of here. All right, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend. Hope you have a great weekend, and then you get to I don't know, wherever it is that's warm. It's not gonna be warm. Let me try that again. Hope you have a great weekend. This was super fun hanging out. See you later.